We're here with Jennifer Baker for this Live Life Well segment. Dr. Jennifer Baker from Good Dads.
Right.
And we're talking about what has become very controversial, the death of Charlie Kirk. Of course, we've had the political assassination of the Minnesota lawmaker, Melissa Hortman, too. So here in the past few months, we've had all this violence.
Right.
And just on the surface, it appears we are really struggling as adults to talk about this in a sane way. How do you communicate? And we're going to focus on children today. I'm going to ask you some about adults later, just warning you. But how do we as parents, if you have younger children, and I'm sure that we're going to go by age group, I'm guessing, how do you talk to them about a complex topic like a political murder?
Right. Well, I think if you have younger children, the younger children simply don't need to know. You don't need to talk about it. It's probably, you don't need to draw that to their attention. They may draw it to yours, but, you know, kind of depends. But let's just talk about maybe about 5th, 6th grade up, middle school age and high school. And then I think people think they need to talk to their children or they need to say something to them. I think the best thing they should to do is like, what have you heard? Let's ask questions. Let's ask lots of questions to hear where our children are, what they've heard, what they're worried about, what their friends are saying, what they're noticing at school. Now, I'm going to guess if you're in middle school or high school, yes, this is on your radar. Your friends are talking about it. You know, many churches this last weekend had the minister incorporated that into the sermon, but a lot of times children are not in the sermon or maybe not paying attention, you know?
Yeah.
They're not in that part of the worship service. So, and it's probably come up in school, but I'm going to guess it's come up more in middle school, maybe in history class, social studies, civics kind of thing, or in high school. And certainly we know that I think Glendale is planning a rally kind of thing. So high school kids are going to know about it. And so I would, in fact, I just talked to a mom this morning who was said she actually, I think, I can't remember if she brought it up or her 14-year-old daughter brought it up, but she did exactly the right thing. She said, so what have you heard? And then let the child talk and then say, well, what do you think? So it is not so important at this moment that we tell our kids what to think or believe, although we certainly, you know, may want to share some of that, but it's a lot more important to find out what they know and what they're thinking or how they're being influenced, probably mostly by their peer group, but it could be by what they're hearing or reading on social media.
If you have a child 4th grade and below, your advice is don't bring it up unless it comes up from them.
Right.
If it does come up from them,
then you want to have some of the same conversations. So it sounds like you're worried about that, or what are you thinking about that, or maybe you heard a family member or a relative talking about that and you want to know, you're wondering what happened, so tell me what you think happened. You know, let's hear about their world first. It's a little bit like when a child, you know, would ask about where babies come from, or sometimes they want to know if somebody grew up in Iowa, you know, as opposed to what is the process of conception, reproduction, etc. So sometimes parents get way too far ahead of their child's thinking. And
gotcha.
We need to be thoughtful about that. So, and I would say, please be careful of your own anxiety and your own strong feelings, potentially strong feelings about this. Let's keep an even keel, because your anxiety is only going to fire up your child's anxiety.
Or if you're angry about a particular you don't want to transfer the anger.
Right. Oh, it's not
to your
helpful.
child.
Not helpful. And besides that, if we think, let's take your average 14 through 17-year-old, it's not like you can cut off the top of their head, pour in all the information you want them to have, and they're going to go, oh, you're right. You're right, Dad.
Teenagers always agree with their parents, right?
Not so much. You know, sometimes they just disagree for the sake of disagreeing.
Yeah.
So you asking questions is helping them think, and that's what we want to do in a situation
Help them
like this.
think it through.
We want them to think about these things.
Is this a situation where you try to bring it back to your family's values? If the value is just a simple one, we don't kill people. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's, you know, the obvious one on the top, but maybe there are other values about listen to somebody if they disagree with your point of view, or what are some of the other values? Is there a way to take the conversation and then steer it into these are the values I have and I want you to have those too, or is that heading off in the wrong direction?
No, I think that's not a bad direction to go, but I think you also need to be thoughtful about, is the child ready for that complete conversation at this moment?
Gotcha.
So let's say you're driving to school, the subject comes up, or you're going to soccer practice, or you're going somewhere, and so you have a conversation, and then they're like, hey, can I have that new dress for homecoming? Like, oh, well, I thought we were here. I was. So if you handle this part well, that's going to increase the likelihood that you can have more conversations that may be difficult or uncomfortable. So be careful not to use this as an opportunity to lecture your child.
Gotcha.
That's very important. Now, you could, let's say you're sitting down for dinner and your two middle school, high school kids are there, and you could just have a conversation and say, hey, you guys, it seems like everybody's talking about the Charlie Kirk assassination. What do you think about that? So now you've got two adolescents there, which is going to be an interesting conversation, or they might just go like dead silence, but you know. And then, but you could, if things are going well, say, well, you know, in our family, even when we don't agree with each other, assuming this is true, you're always allowed to say what you think as long as you do it in a respectful way. It's kind of like freedom of speech in the family. So
You want to have a situation where people are able, they feel able and
Right.
comfortable to express their opinion.
Right. And so, you know, in this particular situation, freedom of speech as a value in our country has come up, and it's really being debated. What do you guys think about that? What do your friends say about that? I mean, I really, really wanted to know what my kids were thinking, what they were being told, what their friends were saying. If you start off telling them, you will never find out.
So
That's very rare.
ask the question and then listen is what I'm really hearing
Yeah.
overall when it comes to fifth grade up, but really
Yeah.
all age groups.
And let's go back to the idea about violence, and that where you could talk about your family value. Like, well, how does it work when people try to solve a problem by using force or violence? What do you think about that? How does that work in a relationship? How does that work in a family? What if I didn't agree with what your uncle or your grandfather or the neighbor said? How far is okay to go? What do you think about how far is that? Because see, that's the whole issue here, is how far is okay. And so you want to bring them, that's a good place when you're asking those questions, for them to think about the values you hopefully have been incorporating into them.
Right.
Yeah.
Violence isn't the way to solve a perceived problem.
Right. And
Yeah.
then you could also say, what would you think if I did that? You know, how would you feel about that if that were a behavior from someone in our family. So again, I'm not telling my kids. I do definitely have convictions about this, but I really want to hear what they think, because I am not going to have a chance at all to influence them if that's important to me to influence them. And I think that is to most parents, if I don't really listen to where they're coming from and what's behind their thinking.
Okay, I'm going to ask you about adults now.
Okay.
Because I've already heard of people trying to have a conversation about this, and they come from different points of view. The example I heard was we're talking about Charlie Kirk here, so I'm going to make it clear this is not I'm relating to you what I've heard was the source of a major argument.
Okay.
So the argument is Charlie Kirk is a saint from the one side. The other side said, but he said this thing that I considered horrible. And in the family, a heated discussion breaks out, and the two sides go their separate ways. So you have this very emotional issue involving an issue we all know about,
Right.
if you've paid any attention to the news. Right. So how do you bring, if you're in that, and this isn't me, by the way, if you're in that situation, how do these two people go back to being relatives who care about each other when they've just had a knockdown, drag-out, verbal brawl?
And you know, that's really unfortunate because that does happen. And I would say, hopefully, one of them has the dignity and the humility. And I could not underscore that enough. Humility and the dignity to say, you know, I don't think I did a very good job of listening to where you're coming from. I might not agree with you, but I need to understand better why you think as you do. Because clearly, I've seen you and all these other things, and I know you. I know the good things about you, and you feel so strongly about this. So help me understand that. You may not get to share your perspective, but if you listen to someone, that speaks volumes.
We're really coming back to that listening word again.
Yes.
So if we have this situation with adults where there's been this hurt feelings on both sides, so there's opinion here, and there's hurt feelings. I didn't hear that you need to say, I'm sorry. No, because the one person feels this way and the other person feels this way.
Say you're sorry for what you believe. You may need to apologize if you escalated the conversation, if you invalidated the other person's opinions or feelings. If you said that's the stupidest thing that I've ever heard in so many words. And sometimes we say that in a lot more colorful language.
Yes.
But when you do that, that other person feels attacked, and that's not helpful. Now, I'm all about influencing people. You know I am.
Yeah.
I have strong feelings about some things, but it's never been my experience that you do a very good job of changing someone else's opinion. If you invalidate them, if you escalate the conversation, if you act in an aggressive way toward them, it is not respectful of them.
And just the day before this happened, I listened to a podcast, and it wasn't, they weren't family members. These were kind of thought leaders on the left and the right. And it was fascinating to hear them disagree, but have a thoughtful conversation.
Right.
Because they were listening to each other. And I just, after it happened, I just wondered, would the same conversation, hopefully these people would have had the same conversation, but with the temperature running high the next day, would these two people have had the same thoughtful conversation about their points of view from the left and the right? It was fascinating to hear it and then to think about, oh, this was recorded the day before this event happened. So what you're saying is more like that, where people on opposite sides can listen to each other and not get maybe, like you were saying, personal. You're that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. You're dumb.
Yeah.
That is your...
What kind of idiot are you?
There you go.
That kind of language. Also, let's just acknowledge that we're not always at our best selves. You know, sometimes I will say I'm unfit for human interaction. Really, you know, I have those times when I'm tired, I'm not going to respond well, I can be cranky, irritable, prickly, whatever. That is not a good time to have that conversation. When you want to have a meaningful conversation with someone that you are going to guess might not agree with you, you need to be at your best self. And you need to be in a space where you can go. So, like the day after it happened, maybe there's a lot of emotion on that day. So that's not the day to have that conversation. Let's say you're going to bring this up with your kids. Let's do that at a time when you're well rested, when you're not just get the credit card bill and you're like, you know, freaking out about something. Let's do that at a time when we are like, hey, let's talk about this.
Maybe give yourself some grace because temperatures are running high.
Right.
There's a lot of emotion happening around this.
Right.
And like you were saying, if you have this emotion as a parent, it's going to be hard to, if you're like wound up, it's going to be hard to have a decent conversation with your children.
Yeah. I read a book once where the quote was, somebody's got to have some dignity, let it be me. So when you get into this back and forth and that, and you know, he deserved it, she deserved it, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It takes someone with some humility and dignity to say, someone's got to have some dignity here, and let that be me. That's the bigger person, really.
Yeah. Have
Hard to do.
Have we covered it today?
I think so. I would just say, and this is not something you have to bring up with your kids, but being a student of history is really helpful. Recently read a book about the presidents, and of course we had presidents that were assassinated. Feelings were very, very high, and of course we know during the Civil War, brother fought brother. I mean, thousands of people were killed in the spirit of defending what they believed to be the right thing. And I thinking there were good people on both sides, but they were caught up in, this is the group that I'm with, so whether I align with them to get all together, I've got to be with this group. Does that make sense? James Clear just wrote a beautiful essay about that, like how we don't really change people's opinions based on giving them the facts. Because if you're a part of a group that's on one side of this,
and that's your identity,
and that's your identity and your friends, okay? Maybe you don't totally align with everything, but those are your friends.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm on a different side, and these are my friends. It's very unlikely that you're going to win me over, or I'm going to win you over by telling you that you and your friends are all idiots.
It's going to create hurt feelings instead.
Right. And distance, and then withdrawal, and then you're not going to have those conversations anymore.
Or you're not going to be friends anymore.
And that's a shame.
And it would be a shame.
Yeah.
Well, we bring you in for Live Life Well. We have these difficult conversations sometimes, and really we kind of present a scenario of a problem and we say, Dr. Baker, help us fix this. Give us advice on how to fix all this stuff. And, you know, we really hope that when you watch this and some of the other Live Life Well segments, that you, the viewer, come away with some things that can improve your life.
Right. Some ways that will make your life better.
Yeah, that's the goal. We hope it helps. Thanks for being here.
You're welcome.